See this. So, welcome back, everyone. We have Lainey Miller, and her topic is Work is Changing. Are you? And Lainey's coming to us from Sausalito. So, let me read her bio real quick, and we'll get going. So, Lainey Miller is the founder and president of EA Search LLC, a premier search firm specializing in senior level executive support. With over 30 years experience and a passionate mission for finding the right support staff for individuals and leaders in all industries, Lainey's high rate of success reflects her many years of expertise in effective assessment and matching of senior executive management with the most effective of support staff. So let's give it up for Lainey.
Thank you, Gina. What a great intro. And I want to say hello to everybody. It is a very high anxiety week this week with our elections and God knows what else is going on. So thank you for coming today to hear me speak. And what I'd like to do is share with you what I believe is really going on for the profession. That is the silver lining of the pandemic. Just a little bit about me other than my bio is that I started in the business of staffing over 40 years ago. So I've been in the business, I'm showing my age, but I don't care. So I've been in the business of placing people on administrative jobs since the 70s. And what was that back then? That was secretarial placement. It was data entry clerks for those giant computers and a few executive secretaries. And then things kind of moved along and the computer came along right after word processing. And at that time, there was a tremendous amount of change in the profession. And there was a tremendous amount of growth in the profession. And a lot of people had anxiety about, is this going to, replace the secretarial profession or what's really going to happen? But the people that embraced technology at that time really fast forwarded their careers. And I am going to tell you why I believe the same opportunity exists today. So we're going to talk really about virtual work and how suddenly that impacted us. How did it impact us? What have we learned from doing it? Where is the silver lining in this very challenging time we've had? So let's just look a little bit about what has happened to you in your profession, and actually all of us in our professions since I call it the lights going out, but when we all suddenly were virtual and had to stay home. So almost all of us had to change the way we work. I had to change the way I worked, and certainly every single one of you had to suddenly adapt and change the way you worked. And we all had to create new habits, right? Those of us with children had to balance the homeschooling. Those of us, who were used to going to visit clients and interview candidates had to do that remotely through this new, what was then a new mechanism called Zoom. And, fundamentally, when we look back on those times, we say, well, those were the normal times. And now we're creating a new normal. But none of us know quite where it's going. Your executives don't know quite where it's going. You don't quite know where it's going. And I certainly don't quite know where it's going. So basically, we have a knowledge that something new is being created. But the only thing we know for sure, and this is the thing we really have to embrace, is that our absolute only constant right now is that everything is changing. And everything's changing at a pace that if you aren't a little anxious, it's amazing. I mean, all of us have a certain amount of anxiety now. So let's look at what's changed for you and what can happen during this time, even though the challenges are enormous. So what's changed is we all work remotely now. I mean, there are a few people going back into offices, but most of us are still working remotely. What does that mean to you in your profession? You are separated from your executives and your teams in a way that is unprecedented. The majority of the way you're communicating is on email or Zoom. And what does that mean to your jobs? What that means is you have to extract information, don't you? You have to extract information rather than being able to observe it as you could when you were in the office. And, a little known fact is that email is only 30% of the way we communicate as human beings. And text is probably less. So just to know that the level of communication you have with that medium is limited. It's only content. So I think what the important thing to know is at this moment in time, communication is one of the most critical ingredients in the success of what you're going to be doing. And I'm going to talk to you about a number of other things that are really important in terms of fast forwarding your career. But I will tell you that the importance of really assuming a leadership role in the area of communication is really at the top of the list. When the whole thing happened, that we were sheltering in place, all of a sudden we had 8 or 10 searches going on. They were all put on hold. And for the first time in probably 40 years, my life was very quiet work-wise. So I tried to think how I could be of help to people, and I called a number of virtual assistants in Silicon Valley. And I asked them, I said, what do you do as a virtual assistant that is critical to success in being a virtual assistant and critical to success in the profession? And so I gathered information from them, and I have sent to the conference this list. But I'd like to go over the list with you and make a few comments about it. And I will tell you that of all the things on this list, communication is the one I'm going to talk about the most today, because communication is the foundation of everything in an executive assistant and executive relationship. So these are the things that I heard from the very top virtual assistants in Silicon Valley in terms of how they could pivot, how they could get what they needed in terms of information, what was critical in terms of habits. And we'll just go through them really quickly, and you can follow along if you have it in your book. And then we'll come back to talking about the one that I think is the key to moving your career forward, which is communication. So practicing flexibility of time, place, and priorities. That means that you can't really be attached to when or where things are going to happen when you're in a virtual situation. The idea of having a predictable routine of what's available to you and what you're going to need to do is much more challenging in a virtual relationship. So this flexibility of, the word is pivot being thrown around a lot, but it is a good word for the ability to turn left, then turn right, and be willing to help, whether it's virtual or all of a sudden you have to go visit the office for a few days. But this flexibility is really, really important. Secondly, and the one we'll talk about the most, is effective communication, transparent, consistent, and frequent. I cannot stress enough how important it is to become the absolute director of communication in your relationship with your executives. Now, it doesn't mean that you walk in and announce, I'm now the director, but it does mean that you shift your mind and your attitude changes, and you basically take full responsibility for initiating, when it's appropriate and so forth and so on, enough communication so that you can focus on being strategic. You can focus on being proactive. You can function in a self-directed way. Without communication, your job will shrink to a level of frustration. And if you try to get your executive to communicate more, and you're the one kind of saying, please communicate more, it's not going to happen. What has to happen is that your attitude shifts to the realization that you are the one responsible for creating communication. Now, that's not just Zooming, and it's not just emailing. It's all kinds of ways to gather information in ways other than what we used to do. And we'll go over a little of that when we talk later about communication. And then number 3, here's the biggie, and I think a couple of people have been talking about this over the last few days, but learning the art and science of leadership. You, if you grow your career, are growing into a leadership role. Now, in Silicon Valley, Google created the title Executive Business Partner, and that's starting to filter into other parts of the country. But I want you to hear the title, Executive Business Partner. You cannot partner with somebody without leading your part of it. So the profession now is shifting from an assistant level to a partnership level. That is a huge shift in the potential for the role. Huge. But it starts with you learning the art and science of leadership. You becoming a leader within the partnership role with your executive. You are a leader of support. You are a leader of communication. And that's a different mindset than assisting. So it's you taking a step into perhaps the unknown of leadership in this relationship. And it's a slow but sure shift. You can't do it all at once. But if you first accept the fact that this is a leadership role, that's the first step, because you're changing your attitude. And when you change your attitude, the outside world changes along with you. But don't think that it'll be like immediate. It does take time to change your habits and your attitudes. So one of the first things that is really important in that executive business partnership is to really learn the business and personal goals and strategies of your executive. And there are a lot of ways to do that. We don't have time to talk about that, and certainly we can answer questions in the Q&A. But you want to be focused on learning the business and personal objectives, because it's only if you know that you can increase your value by assuming more responsibility at the level that will really save time for your executive and allow her or him to be more productive and more creative. When things are in chaos, executives and executive business partners alike have to take time to be quiet and be creative. And if you have an executive who's going, and we'll talk about that in a minute, or doesn't have, time to go to the restroom, I mean, you're the one that can change that for them, slowly. So that's something we'll talk about too in a minute. But proactive and preventative relationship support and management. The idea of being proactive and preventative is something many of you have been doing routinely, I'm sure, or you wouldn't be at this conference. You're learners, you're growers, you want to change, you want to develop. But right now, to be proactive, again, means that you have to create enough communication to know how to be proactive, because what you must learn to do if you're going to partner and you're going to be a leader is you must learn how to create solutions out of problems that perhaps weren't there ever before, especially in these changing times. So then number 5 on your list is tactical and strategic focus. Tactical and strategic focus. Now that's a tricky one, because You don't have a lot of face time with your executives right now, but you're wanting to listen to as much as possible within the scope of your job so that you can understand what unspoken expectations exist, and question what's being said. So the idea of focusing strategically and tactically, that means you're looking for ways in to do your job proactively so that it's strategically enhancing the productivity and peace of mind of the executives. And so it's, again, becoming the director in your mind of strategy in support, the director of being tactical in support, and not waiting for somebody to request you to be tactical or strategic, or waiting for somebody to give you permission. It's the time to really grow into the leadership capacity that the role has, right? It's that moment in the career potential. And thanks to the virtual experience, it's all happened very fast because of the sheltering in place. There were many of my clients that thought it was absurd to allow people to work virtually. They were very old school in that regard, and they would just say, no, we want them here. We want them here. Well, meanwhile, you know, in the suddenly virtual world, productivity has skyrocketed for many companies in the virtual relationship. Why is that? We can talk about that another time, but you know, people have time to do yoga classes. They have time to meditate. They're not in 2 hours of commute each way. There are a lot of reasons why. Of course, there's a lot of stress for people with children as well. And we all get stressed when we don't get to travel and go outside and go see our friends. But anyway, the next one is becoming the operations guru of your relationship. I put that in there because process. We have to create processes that are flexible and that can be changed quickly, because we don't know where this is going to end up. And we never know from day to day what's going to be required. You know, we all get very attached to our processes. We love our processes. We love doing it certain ways all the time. We have 21 things we do in our search process, and we've had it printed out for years. And I love that process. But guess what? You know, 10 of them don't work anymore. So we have to change our process. We have to pivot. And I reluctantly had to admit that to myself because I loved our process. So what does that mean? It means that I'm having to, as you have to, learn new technologies that allow us to work more quickly. We have to inspire change away from things that are very time consuming, because the world is moving faster and faster. And also, we want to stay open to recognizing the support we need to give to our clients, in my case, or your executives in another, as their priorities are shifting, because they are shifting constantly. I mean, everybody is in this together, which I find that comforting, that we're all in this together. I think it has brought us all as humans closer. You know, that we share a common enemy in this virus, and also that we've had to respond to the common need to change all of our work styles. You know, nobody has a corner on that market for sure. And then number 7, the commitment to strengthen and enhance levels of trust. Trust. Now, you all know, because you've been in this business, trust is something that has to be earned. You can start a new job and they could have had 3 terrible support people before you. So what are you going to experience in your first month? I bet everybody would say the same thing. Yeah, you would say, micromanage. This person will micromanage you because they're not used to having trust that you have a level of excellence that you do. So the trust has to be developed. Now, many of you have executives, I think, that you know already, and they already trust you. So it's probably not a big issue for you. But there are some of you who got hired in this virtual period. And there's some of you who have just maybe started working for somebody where the trust is not quite there yet. So how do you create trust in a virtual relationship? And I think that one of the ways you can do that is to deliver more than is expected on promises and deliver it earlier or on time. So the more you deliver on time and early in an excellent fashion, the less micromanaging and the more trust is developed. And then secondly, I'll tell you, as somebody who has been in an executive role for many years, there are so many things going on in your executives' minds. And when I have an assistant who just sends me a little email that says, no need to respond to this, this is an update, project number A or project A is half finished, I expect it to be done by Friday, please don't worry about it a bit. Or, this other project also is blah, 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 blah. I just go, oh, thank you, because it takes it out of my mind and it frees up a place in my mind for more creativity. So those are 2 tips, that I've written down, but I'm sure there are more that people have. But communicate when you are developing trust, and even when you're not, you want to keep communicating and you want to deliver. And then lastly, inquire, question, and notice. What is needed to move productivity and peace of mind forward for your executives? Again, a leadership role. They don't know any more than you do really about what is needed for support to keep them going productively and developing peace of mind in these times. You probably know more than they do about what can be done. So again, becoming the director of figuring out what it's going to take, inquiring, noticing, asking poignant questions so that you can start elevating your game, offering ideas to contribute in areas that they hadn't realized were things you would happily do to move their productivity forward, to increase their peace of mind. And really taking steps slowly to over deliver and take on projects as you notice the need. An example of that might be, and I think a lot of people are already doing this in the sales arena, but an example of that might be, if somebody's supporting a vice president of sales, they're so busy, they're going. And maybe historically, the assistant hasn't been included in the weekly sales update meetings. Just embedding yourself in that meeting, saying, I really request that I be in that meeting because otherwise I'm not going to understand what's going on. And actually, that's another point, is to embed yourself, whatever department you're in whatever meeting is possible. And if they resist, you just explain to them that if you're there, they will thank you one day because you're going to increase their productivity and their time. But back to the sales manager, if you're sitting there and you're taking notes on all the promises that all these salespeople have made to their executive, and then you say afterwards to your sales manager, your sales VP, why don't I be the one to hold these people's feet to the fire, hold them accountable for their promises to you? And you're the one that over the course of a week checks in with that team, makes sure they're on track, and you'll get to know the team better. And then come the meeting, you have a report as to what the project deliverables were, and you are the one that has saved a huge amount of time for that executive. So that's just one small example of embedding yourself in a meeting so that you can increase your value. Now, back to my first talk about communication. We have created, as a result of the pandemic, actually, these are other things that have been silver linings. We've created roundtables for our EAs to CEOs to come together on Zoom and discuss what's been challenging, share tips and tricks with each other. And before we had the last one, we sent a survey out, and we asked what the most challenging aspects of virtual support were. And the answers came back: number one, communication; number two, work-life integration; and number three, interestingly enough, a sense of fulfillment at the end of the day, which we don't have time to talk about. But you know, that's really because we humans love connecting with other humans physically in person. But anyway, the second one, work-life integration, is a big topic where we talk about setting boundaries so that you're not constantly working 24/7 all the time, but you have time for that yoga class, you have time for your children. But that's also another topic for another time. But communication is what I want to focus on, and that's what we will talk about now, because to me, as I said, it's the foundation, and it's almost the foundation and the walls and the roof and the rooms of a house in terms of an executive business partnership, because it has to be something that is concise, powerful, strategic, tactical, and it has to bring both you and the executive benefit. So it is something I like to focus on a lot because I don't think people give it enough attention. So let's look how communication has changed right now. And it's changed in many ways, and I'm sure you have other things to add to this, but I've selected just a couple. Number one, communication when we're in the office. What do? We observe. Somebody walks in, bad mood. We know a certain amount from that. And we listen and we intuit. You know, the eyes and ears. You are the eyes and ears to your executives. You're overhearing things. You know, you're sensing things. You know, how many times do you tell people before they want to go to see your executive, today's not a good day? You know, you've intuited today's not a good day. But that's all been taken away. And all we've got is a flat screen and text and email. So we are handicapped when it comes to communication in a way that we never have been before. And don't underestimate any kind of frustration that you feel about it, because our wings have been totally clipped. We can't fly, you know, let's face it, relative to communication. And virtual work relies exclusively on Zoom, email, and text. And again, to repeat, email and text is only content, and it's only 30% of the way we communicate as humans. You know, we use our face, we use our hands, you know, there's energy coming out of us that people in your business do well at reading, and so forth. So now we've totally eliminated many of the ways that we historically have communicated. So how do we as humans now increase our value in spite of this and compensate for this loss of communication and connection? How do we do that? Everybody's going to do it differently, but I am going to tell you what has to happen before it's effective, no matter what you do, okay? And everybody, you know, we're all like snowflakes. We're all different. Your executives are different than my clients, you know, and I have to function in a different way than you do in my role relative to communication. But fundamentally, we all have to do one thing here. And I believe that what we have to do is change our attitude about our work. Now, in my work, there's a different group of attitudes. There are a different group of attitudes I have to change. Part of it is having human contact and having that energy hit on my clients so I like to think of myself as a matchmaker. Well, it's not easy being a matchmaker if you can't intuit the person, right? But I'm trying. I'm doing the best I can. But the change in attitude in your role has to be that you're not looking to your executive to create the communication you need to be valuable. Shift. You need to think of yourself as the director of communication in the relationship. So you're no longer saying, oh, I can't get in touch with him or her. Oh, he never wants to talk to me. That's old school. That's gone. You have to be the one to figure it out. And believe me, you have the potential to do that. And every relationship has a different solution. But the first and only thing I ask you to do, if you do nothing else, is shift your attitude. Realize it's your job, it's your responsibility to create the communication you need to be strategic, to be proactive, to be self-directed, and to become an executive business partner. Focus on partner, a true executive business partner. So one of the things that's really, really important is to realize that your solution is going to be customized to your personality, to the demands of your executives, to his or her personality. Everyone is different. And there are always issues that come up that we can say are sort of generic. And I have a couple I'm going to share with you. But basically, everything is a customized solution that you're creating as director of that communications relationship. Thirdly, how do you do that? How do you begin to do that? I will tell you, in my experience with new clients since the virus, what I'm careful to do is spend enough time creating very poignant questions that are concise, because they don't want to give me a lot of time either. You know, they just think I can magically, you know, produce the right person. But I need at least a half hour to an hour on the phone or Zoom, or I won't know them. So in order to keep them on the phone or keep them talking to me, I spend time ahead of time creating questions that are strategic enough for me to know what kind of person is going to be important for that role. And it's not easy because they're in a hurry that, oh, I don't want to, you know, and the same is true with you, right? You're always the one that's going to be bumped, you know, in favor of some other appointment. But that will happen less and less the more value they see in their communication with you, I promise. So you must prepare questions, not just catch up. Oh, this is what I did. This is what I did. That's not good use of FaceTime. You want to have time to ask questions that allow you to increase your value. You can always give updates in emails that they don't have to read. But when you have that FaceTime, you want to ask the questions that allow you to know their priorities, that allow you to know what's on their plate, allow you to know their biggest challenges, allow you to start to see how you can help better and more strategically. So all in all, what you're doing is you're beginning to increase your value because you're beginning to know more and more accurately where the help could be improved and increased on your part. And meanwhile, you're building a partnership as opposed to an assistant relationship. So I have two examples that I've created of two executives. So my guess is that at least 50% of you have one or the other of these. And it'll be fun to hear about the others that are kind of difficult or challenging. But the first generic example I wanted to give was your one-on-one executive with your executive always gets bumped. Yours always gets bumped. Yours is the one that leaves the calendar. And so you can go a week or more without having any FaceTime or any communication with your executive that's really needed to do what we just talked about doing. So my first solution, and I love, you know, we're gonna have more solutions in the Q&A, but my first solution to the person who always gets bumped off the schedule is schedule your meetings when nobody else wants to be there. So that could be 6 a.m. or it could be 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. But, you know, don't compete with the schedule where everybody else wants to be. That's number one, number one solution. Number two, and this is what I just talked about, plan focused, concise meetings where you ask relevant questions. You can tell it's a relevant question when your executive pauses and says, oh, well, look, blah, blah, blah. Look, the more relevant questions you ask, the more your value increases and the more your executive will want to have those one-on-ones with you, because they will notice the difference in their own work, their own productivity. You will have liberated time for them. And then they will want to talk with you more and more as they see more and more time liberated. And then the last one on that one was just be willing to change the times. Don't be attached to it being every day at a certain time. It's just not going to happen in this day and age. It's going to change. Everything's changing all the time. So the big thing is to make friends with change, because the change is the only constant. I can't say that enough. So my second example is, I call this the go, go, go executive. This person doesn't have time to go to the bathroom. This person is too busy to talk with you. They're traveling, maybe, again, I don't know, maybe if they have private jets, they're traveling. And they have back-to-back meetings, and they love it. They're back-to-back meetings, and they're go, go, go. And you don't want to add to their problem, right? Because you consider them already overbooked, right? Already overbooked. So here's I have 3 ideas for this as well. Review their schedule very carefully. Now, this is tricky because you might get in trouble initially for doing something like this, but I guess for the people who know their executives well enough, and if they're a go, go, go executive, they would have earned enough trust to be able to get away with it, maybe. But if you can look at the calendar, and there are always people on a calendar that can wait. And if you know your executive well enough to know that Mary Smith is an obligatory thing, he's nice, or she's nice enough to do Mary Smith once every 3 weeks because blah, blah, blah. Move Mary. Just explain to Mary that, that it's a busy time. And instead of having Mary in there, schedule alone time for this go-go-goer. And let the go-go-goer have time to be still, have time to be mindful. And then at the very end of that liberated time, schedule a little one-on-one with yourself. That's one that might be too risky, I don't know. But then number 2, review the schedule carefully. And I had an assistant that used to do this brilliantly. She would, without being asked, do preliminary calls with people I had to talk to who were new people. And she would say, may I ask how you were referred to us? Can I help you with a little information about our company? What are some things, blah, blah, blah. And before I talked to that person, she'd have a little portfolio of their website, of what she learned. And, it was such a help. I cannot tell you how much time it was saved. So there may be preliminary meetings you can take with your executive that will save a lot of time because you'll do the initial prep. And you may already be doing this. Attend any meetings you can. This is the most important one. Embed yourself in meetings. You have to be pushy. You have to be pushy in this new way of being if you're going to be a true partner. Now, I don't mean being obnoxious about it, but, really being tenacious and persistent. I see that you're having a meeting with your leadership team. I really would like to take notes so that we really remember what's what in the meeting. And, just really get into as many meetings as possible, because that's another way of communication coming to you. The more meetings you can sit in on, the more you can kind of be a fly on the wall in places where you didn't used to be, the better you'll be able to communicate, and the better you'll be able to support strategically, and the better you'll be able to be proactive and self-directed, and really grow your career and experience the silver lining of all this challenge and all this kind of upset that we've all been going through. So I'd just like to close with a couple of tidbits. And I just want to say and acknowledge the anxiety of this time for all of us. It just brings tears to my eyes. I mean, we've been through a lot. On top of the sheltering in place and the change in the way we work, we have a very, very chaotic political situation in our republic. We don't quite know where it's all going. And our children are not in school and they're not playing outside. It's a very, very anxious time. So let's just acknowledge that. And we'll get through it. And we'll look back on it and say, how did we ever make it? But we will. And we're learning a lot. We're learning to know our families again, and we're learning to know our new priorities that are emerging. So, you know, the silver linings are there, and it's important that we all focus on those. But as a result of all of this chaos and all this change, there's huge opportunities in the same way there was when computers were invented. Computers were invented, and when secretaries thought they'd be replaced, the ones that said, oh, well, I'm going to embrace the change, became executive assistants and grew the profession. And the same thing is going to happen today with the people that embrace change and go on. I think I'm being asked to leave here. I'm not sure, but I'll just keep talking. But here are the 3 tips to increase happiness and grow your career in these times. Okay, I'll be quick. Number 1, learn to go within, manage your mind, and access inner wisdom. There's a lot about mindfulness and meditation out there. Take a look at it if you don't already, and access your inner wisdom. Number 2, become the solution of everything, not the problem. You have within you solutions for every single challenge that's going to come along. I promise you do. But if you don't take time to go within and manage your mind will make you nuts. It's too many things coming at you. So become the boss of your own mind, become the solution, not the problem. And Gandhi said it better than I can. He said, be the change you want to see. And then in closing, I want to quote from my favorite person, who's been a former TV celebrity, Oprah Winfrey. And she said this, please, please take it to heart. The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change her future by merely changing her attitude. I'll repeat that. The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change her future by merely changing her attitude. And that's the only thing we know for sure we can change ourselves, and it can be consistent that we change it. Our attitude doesn't have to change if it's embedded in a deep place. So change your attitude, change your job, grow your career, and this whole sheltering in place and challenging time will have been worth the ride, I promise. Okay? All right, maybe we have some questions, Gina.
Yeah, that was so terrific. Can you guys hear me okay? I just had a little audio shift I had to make, but can you hear me? Can you hear me, Lainey?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I have some questions that we have tagged here. And of course, personally, the attitude piece is key for sure. Our father, Joan, and I taught us that, and our parents taught us that, and that's probably why Joan's so good at what she does and where the attitude piece comes in. But in any case, so let's see. We have a question regarding pivot, and this was from Jean Pisano. Since working virtually, I have more free time, no travel arrangements, expenses, etc. I'm taking on new responsibilities for property, accounting, and collections by pulling and analyzing reports, reporting information, liaison to outside vendors, etc. Do I ask for extra pay in the future, or since it's filling an existing gap, consider it part of my responsibilities now?
Wow, what a good question.
Yeah.
That is a great question because, you know, my feeling for years has been that this role is underpaid, and I've worked hard to get that changed myself. But I wouldn't do anything now about asking for more pay. I think the more value you create, the more responsibility you have, the more people will notice. And when things are less chaotic, there will be a time when you'll ask and you'll get. But I would not ask now.
Mhm.
I would just increase your value as much as possible, learn as much as you can, because those are all things going into your personal toolbox, and that's making you more valuable. But I wouldn't ask now if people are not in the best of moods about spending more money right now.
Yeah, good point. Okay, from Yena Noel Ayers, how can you embed yourself in meetings when the executive already has a chief of staff and they do most of the things you are mentioning?
Yeah, I think you have to connect with the chief of staff and lobby there. There are certainly things the chief of staff is doing that they'd love to delegate. It may be the the notes taking. It may be holding people accountable. But I think you have to, the only way I could figure out that you could change that would be to connect with the chief of staff and figure out ways that you could help in the meetings that would allow the chief of staff to be more valuable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
But it's both of these are great questions.
Yeah, and then what is your opinion of the role of chief of staff being more or less glorified admin?
It's a very big question because chief of staff means so many different things in so many different companies. So, for example, in Charles Schwab, they take recent graduates with MBAs and they kind of cycle them through the different departments. And then the people find their way and they become part of that department they're good at. Mm-hmm. In a smaller company than that, a chief of staff sometimes is an executive assistant that has been promoted. Google does that. They'll take a very good executive business partner and put them in a chief of staff role. So the question, though, tell me the question again, Gina.
What's your opinion of the role of the chief of staff being more or less glorified admin? Like just saying, oh, the chief of staff is just a glorified admin.
Yeah. No, the answer to that is it depends entirely on what the size of the company is and what the chief of staff is being asked to do. I had a client that was a big biotech firm where the chief of staff was a very important, consistent conduit, but was changed every 3 years. It just depends. It depends. It's never just one thing. I don't think a chief of staff, I guess I resist the title glorified admin because I think admins are so important. So if somebody
like what's wrong with that?
I say, but it depends. Chief, if you want to be a chief of staff, you have to go very deep to define what that means. Do you want to be in a small company, sort of as a glorified chief operating officer? Do you want to be in a big company? Then you need to go get an MBA. Do you want to be in a company that promotes its EAs to chiefs of staff, and like Google does? You just have to ask yourself, where do I want to go with that?
Right. And there's a couple of people commenting that in their company, the executive assistant to our regional chair title was just changed to chief of staff. And then somebody said, I'm in local government and our chief of staff is definitely not an assistant. So yeah, it sounds like it's very dependent on where you're working.
Yeah. And it's one of those buzzwords too, that you have to dig before you know what the person's doing.
Right. And are they just giving you title and not, and
right,
that whole exchange of we'll give you a title.
I will say something. We had a search in Southern California where the executive, the CEO, required that the person, and they wanted a top level EA, and they required that the person report to the chief of staff. And I wouldn't take the search because the level of person they needed to report to the CEO. And I felt it to be a very cumbersome thing that would set us up for failure. So yeah, it's a sticky wicket, that title.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. We've got about 5 more minutes. A big question just popped in. I've been with my company for 29 years and an EA for 8 years. I've been told during my performance appraisal that my salary is higher than other EAs within the organization, that support higher executives, which is why I received the minimum % increase. I'm blessed to still be employed during COVID, but I'm struggling with this comment. Do you have any feedback for this?
Mm-hmm. That is one of my big pet peeves. When people have been in a company a long time, they are always underpaid. I'm going to be really blunt, underpaid.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that you have to get tough when this is over. And I would go to the powers that be, I don't know who you're supporting, and get an advocate from your executive and march into HR, whoever's in charge of this, and really be strong about it and be prepared to find a new job if they won't meet the market. You can't negotiate unless you're prepared to leave. But it's you have to take the bull by the horns with that one, because you are underpaid. It happens everywhere when people have been there a long time, and that is a classic cop out. You've been here a long time. What's the market? What are other people making? Anyway, that's that bothers me a lot.
Yeah, it's true. It happens in every business and different job levels. Wow, so many amazing questions are coming in. One constant theme this week from Nicole LeBear. One constant theme this week has been to embed yourself in meetings with your executive. While I completely agree with this, I support a CEO and find it hard to do that and do the regular work tasks. I have day-to-day, the regular tasks I have day-to-day. Any thoughts or suggestions on this?
Oh, that's a tough one. The only thing I can say is that you want to look at your day-to-day duties and see if there's any way to streamline them. Are there some softwares, that are available so you're not spending as much time on clerical or administrative work, so that you're liberated to be free to do that. And that's your responsibility to research, and if you go to your executive in a period of time, and say, look, I'd like to purchase this software because that would liberate me to be more help to you. And this is why, come to them with solutions that you've already discovered. If there is a solution out there, but you'll have to find it. But I would say try and streamline and minimize the amount of repetitive work that you have.
Yeah, and speaking of repetitive theme, that was a big part of this conference this week. We have all the stuff from Mike's song. We had a lot of great technical stuff there. We had all the stuff with Vicky Sokol, the Red Cape, so we have some hard skill stuff that we went through this week that really employ those things. And there was other VAs and people like Hayden. So we got a ton of resources. Use what we provided this week in all of that. Because like they said, with AI, if anything, task can be done more than once, it could be automated.
Exactly.
It's the same task. So that's really good point. So thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Another good question. Oh my gosh, these are all so good. So we have 55 we have 55 admins, different titles. How can we get on a similar pay scale? They use Corn Free to make adjustments, and all Dean admins are paid differently. Any suggestions? A lot of terms I don't know.
Yeah, I have a friend who has done a study about compensation for administrative people. He's in the compensation business, and apparently, traditionally, the way people get compensated is there's certain studies that go around to see what the market is, and it's historically kept administrative titles and pay low. So I'd be happy to share that study, number one. But in terms of the titles themselves, I don't have an answer for that because I don't know your industry. You're welcome to email me the question and tell me more about yourself and where you work. And then I can answer it. But I don't have enough information to be able to give you any helpful advice.
Okay. And Lucy Brazier did address some of that they're working on that to get a global titles and that's part of their research too. So maybe you all can collaborate on that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. So let's see. What is the best way to increase knowledge if you support 3 equally busy executives who all function in different areas? And that's from Lisa Lizarraga.
And what's the best way to support what? I didn't hear that word.
Not to support, but to increase your knowledge if you support 3 equally busy executives who all function in different areas. So what is the best way to increase your knowledge? And maybe, Lisa, if you're still on here, can you clarify, increase your knowledge of training or increase your knowledge on how to support 3 different executives?
Maybe to know what her priorities are, she means.
Yeah, maybe that. So maybe let's just address that and then see if she
better know her priorities. Yeah. Communication. I would say you'd have to have a one-on-one with each one of them and identify their priorities relative to the other 2. In other words, you have to get them on the same page as you are and have them realize that they're competing with these other priorities. So when you communicate, have some kind of system where you say it's either an A, B, or C in terms of timeline. And if you can't manage an A, you let them know that somebody else's A is going to have to leave. It's like a juggling thing, and it's really like being a symphony conductor. You have to just make sure that you're clear and they're clear about what has to be done. Otherwise, your hair is going to be on fire, right?
Yeah. And I think that comes back to what you had said earlier about asking the right questions, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, asking the right questions, and also, enlisting them in your support to help them communicate better as to what the priority is. So that when they ask you to do something, you add a line, can wait till Thursday, so that you're getting them trained in giving you enough instructions so that you don't have to think everything has to be done right away.
Mm-hmm. So this is a nice big kind of top level question. Any tips on how to overcome the fear of change and confidently facing new challenges?
Yes. Oh, okay.
Ready for this? Centering.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, for me, and I can only speak about myself, but for me, what I talked about quickly in the talk was learning to be the manager of your own mind and not allowing thoughts to be your boss. Thoughts are only as powerful as the amount of time you spend with them. So basically, in order to manage change, the thing I recommend the most is to learn mindfulness, and learn that the only constant is change in life. Remember when you didn't know how to walk? Remember when you didn't know how to talk? You changed, you grew, and we're all changing all the time. But now change is so external to internal. In other words, we can't control it, right? So how do we control anything? We control our own minds. That's the only thing we can control. And that will allow you to manage change, because the more quiet you get internally, the more the changes outside don't bother you. And there's a lot out there on the internet about mindfulness and about meditation. I really encourage you to become a mindful person, and if you can, a meditator, because that is the secret. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And you will see most top executives in huge companies incorporate meditation of some sort into their daily practice in life. And I'm sure some assistants here will attest to that. And I have a recommendation. There's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is really good and helps you to understand that truth. And that it's up to us. And like you said, attitude. And also Hayden spoke about this in her session about your thoughts and your feelings and your actions, and how we all start with your thought. So
yeah, you are what you think.
Right. Absolutely. So let's see. I think we got to wrap it up. Man, this has been a great Q&A for everyone. And Lainey, thank you so much for your wisdom and your resources. And like Lainey said, everyone reach out to her directly with any questions you may have.
And yeah, if you want to send those questions, Gina, to me,
Sure.
we can take a stab at them as well. And I do want to thank Joan and her team. You guys have been amazing. This is, is kind of a very new experience for everybody to be giving a conference online. So I just say it's been seamless. It's been fun. Brian, you, Joan, Malia, everybody. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. And we've been fortunate to have such great speakers like you make it, happen. We can hold up the infrastructure and all that, but you guys provided the meat and the content. And so we're really happy about that.
Well, thank you so much. And I wish everybody a healthy and happy future. And I hope you've all voted.
Yeah, that's right. That's it. All right, Lainey, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh boy, that was wonderful. And we are going to be down to our very last session with Joan in just a little bit. So I'm going to stop the broadcast, go ahead and stretch, get a drink, go to the restroom, whatever you need to do. And we will be back on in about, we'll start probably in about 5 minutes or so. Okay, thank you.